Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we're going to look at the weekly meta breakdown for the Standard. Best of 3 traditional Standard, Standard with a sideboard, but like kind of tier list best decks. We're going to be focusing on the top 5 Mythic Rank decks right now. We're actually going to do top 6 because 5 and 6 are like a fraction of a percentage off. And I figure, you know what, we'll cover both. So I'm going to be focusing on like top 5s. As the meta's kind of situated, we'll inject when we can find any new kind of breakout decks. We'll also include it in there as well. But top 5 and a half today. We get the data from UntappedGG, what you see on the screen, companion tool that runs alongside Arena's client, aggregates user win rates, gives a whole bunch of cool stats. Link to use Untapped is below, and then I will paste all these deck lists in the video description, timestamp them so you can copy and paste to your heart's content. We are going to start off with looking at popularity of the day, and then we will look at the deck lists themselves. Popularity is what you could kind of anticipate in terms of volume of games of these various decks on the ladder. So right now, because the ladder reset, this is May 5th we're recording, we're going to look Platinum to Mythic Rank because there's not enough data up to the Mythic Rank. If you look right now, there's not enough folks in Mythic to kind of garner that. But when we're looking at the individual data, then we can look back and see as well for like pre the end of the month. So like when everybody pushes for the top rank. So we'll actually look Diamond right now. So we have Esper Midrange at about 12%. We have Boros Convoke at 12% as well. We have Domain at 10%, Grixis at 3%, which is kind of interesting. Grixis is a deck we've seen in a while, as well as Dimir Midrange. If we're looking at kind of the stats, we can see that in like the popularity trends around the Pro Tour, we see Domain get very popular, obviously because it won the list. But if we actually look and kind of see its correlated win rate, and this is just like super small, if we actually kind of look at Platinum for a sec, we can kind of see that the win rate for Domain actually somewhat decreases despite the popularity. So people were kind of anticipating it. We're seeing the decline. We see the Esper Midrange list kind of dropping as well, kind of shifting back to Diamond for a sec. We can see an increase in like Golgari. Golgari's fine deck. I always find it kind of mid, but we're seeing just kind of the popularity of these decks here. The Azorius Control deck also picks up some popularity given that it was in the finals. The decks are kind of congregated here in terms of win rate, but if we're going to jump into it, like I said, we're going to look at just under 7,000 best of 3 matches, Mythic for the last week, April 28th through to the 5th. So we're going to capture that last week, that crucial week of folks pushing for that top place in terms of the ladder. And we're going to jump into it. The highest win rate deck is that aforementioned Azorius Control. So this one was in the finals, and the biggest difference here is on Arena, you can't play Guru lands. So his name is eluding me right now. Fairy Mastermind Takayashi, I think, was playing Guru lands. If you're unfamiliar with Guru lands, they're a special like basic from like 20 plus years ago. The islands are 1,200 US each, and the planes are like 600 or 700 US each. So like one basic land was more than people's entire standard decks. But what we kind of got from the new set in this deck is 3 steps ahead. Flexible counterspell, draw, discard. So kind of like Archmage Charm at home, the Walmart brand, Costco, Kirkland brand Archmage Charm, as well as Phantom Interference. So we're getting these spree cards being effective modular cards. Biggest thing with Control is having that flexibility to, you know, when in a pinch, you can create a creature, you can counter a spell, you can draw, discard, you can copy a creature, whatever you need to do gives you that flexibility. You have March of Otherworldly Light as a flexible removal spell, the Deuce for card advantage, 5 2-mana counters in addition to the other spree style effects. Both versions on 1 lockdown main, only 1 targeted removal in the form of Get Lost in addition to the March. And then you have your full Deluge, your full Wandering Emperor, and the Sunfall. 1 Sunken Citadel, and then you have your utility lands, the Restless Anchorage, Myrex, Demolition Field, all kind of mixed in, as well as the Field of Ruins. Sideboard here, you have Destroy Evil for like enchantments, for big creatures, very useful against like the Domain matchup. Negate as counters, Filigree Silex can be brought in against kind of the low to the ground token decks, Convoke, Mono Red, stuff like that. Graveyard Hate with Unlicensers, Temporary Lockdowns, more sweepers, Tidebinder for activated abilities. Thinking like, Traxa goes on the stack, well, you stifle it, or whatever it may be. Boonbringer Valkyrie as the Baneslayer Angel kind of port, good against aggressive decks. Then Hullbreaker Horror in the counter mirrors, you bring in the Mr. Crab Court himself. So then we move on, second highest win rate deck. We have Temur Control, Temur Analyst, Temur Ramp, Temur World Souls Rage, whatever you want to call it, 66%. And this deck here is looking to leverage the Kamigawa lands, or not the Neon Dynasty lands. Stack it, find a basic, and then you bring them all back with like Aftermath Analyst or World Souls Rage, generate a whole bunch of mana. Those lands do double duty with Nissa in play, get to generate some extra mana. Spelunking, it lets your lands come to play untapped, and then eventually what you're able to do is stick a Virtue, triple your mana, fireball your opponent to death, kind of that way there. Kill times Explosion lets you kill some creatures, lets you draw a discard. You have both the Garenbridge Growths, you've returned a creature from your graveyard, or Shigeki, so you can kind of loop those together to keep bringing back your Rages or whatever card you need. Sideboard, pick your poison, very, very flexible card. Turn the Earth against Jace, for example. If they're milling you, you can flash this back on your upkeep to shuffle cards back into your library so you don't lose to the mill. Doppelgang for the Grindier matchups, just copy a whole bunch of stuff. Negates, Vampire's Vengeance is sweeper. If your opponents bring in things like Soul Guide Lantern or heavier attack on the graveyard, you can go to Bonnie Paul. Clear Cutter just gives you another kind of non-graveyard focused way to kind of smack your opponent, just hit him with blue. Sky Turtle is like, can be used as interaction, so it's like a cheap channel and then you can get it back. It's also a threat. Titan Industry, another way to differentiate your threats. Notably, Titan Industry is an elemental, so Nissa can search it up with a double land. You then go to Boros Convoke, 65%, so we're getting like a good clump of decks around that same win rate. So I believe this is the same version from the Pro Tour. Inspiring Vantage is the biggest upgrade to the deck, just having another untapped duel on the first turns of the game. We have a split between War Leader's Call, Sanguine Evangelist, and the Imidanes. So Imidanes usually always a 4-of, and then these are kind of your flex spots. Full set of cases, and then just a single copy of Yodi in front liner in the deck. Sideboard and the festivities for kind of like the Mirror. Lithomantic Barrage for like Esper, stuff like that. Destroy Evil, big stuff, and Temporary Lockdown. Get Lost, another flexible removal spell. Invasion for the more controlling decks. Anything with like Destroy, notably not great against Sunfall since it exiles. And then Urbrass Forge for the Grandier matchups as well. You just bring in the Forge and it kind of solos the game a lot of times. Moving on, we go to Dimir Midrange, and we have the version here. This is the Prof's Eidetic Memory version. So again, another deck hovering around that 65% mark. So with the memory, it basically rewards you for drawing extra cards. You throw a bunch of counters on things. Use things like Steam Core Scholar to draw you extra cards to trigger. With the Looting, similar with Duelist of the Mind. The Nathan Stoyer Worlds card. And then it's got like Tiny Bones as an evasive creature with the Death Touch. We're seeing Hostile Investigator for the mid-range mirrors. Forcing discard, getting some value there. Even when your opponent, say, Rafiends, that discard will also trigger to get the Investigate. Otherwise, you have things like Shoot the Sheriff, Go for the Throat. You have the Bat for hand hate, and then some cheap draw and hand hate mixed into there. Your sideboard, again, just various removal, Graveyard Hates, counter spells, Glistening Deluge for the Convoke decks, the aggro decks, the Liliana for the Grindier matchups, similar to Shana's Tidebinder and Urtai as well. When you want to shift up, become either a little bit more controlling or deal with like your opponent's Sunfalls, stuff like that. So in 5th place, it's basically a tie. We'll cover mono red, and then we'll look at the Esper Midrange deck as well. Both are very close in terms of overall win rate. One thing I'm kind of happy with, like selfish, I sold my Paper Bloodthirsty adversaries to buy Slick Shots, and I'm glad that I kind of switched over so I don't need them for standard mono red, and I could play Pioneer and standard mono reds decks at the same time. But we're seeing the Slick Shot coming, slotting in there. Main board Forge, love this move. The meta is very grindy. Having the Forge main helps to grind out your opponent. Esper doesn't usually bring in ways to deal with artifacts. They usually have ways to hit enchantments. So this could provide you some card advantage. It also allows you in mono red to shift post board if you want to become more of a controlling deck. You're able to kind of shift off some of the smaller creatures or the targeted removal stuff, or targeted like pumps, and then just bring in more removal. But between Witch Stalker, Lightning Strike, Frenzy, these 8 can still go face, but the Frenzy helps deal with some of the bigger stuff mixed into there as well. Sideboard and the Festivities as a sweeper, Lithomantic Barrage for like the Esper matchup, Soul Guide Lantern for Graveyard Hate, Obliterating Bolt in here. Full set of Case is amazing. This card's great. I love this card. Just for the grindier matchups, provides you card advantage again, and then Chandra, similar case. The nice thing with Chandra is doesn't get hit by Farewell, and doesn't get hit by, well, so Destroy Evil will hit the Crimson Pulse, Get Lost will hit Chandra and Case, but won't hit Urbrass Forge, so it's kind of like differentiating your threats that way. And then lastly, we have Esper Midrange. So there's quite a few versions of Esper from the Pro Tour. This one currently has the highest win rate on the ladder. Again, just like a hair under 61%, similar to Mono Red. So the Wedding Announcement version helps in like the mirror just because it gives you more bodies, you provide some card advantage. We have Fairy Mastermind, Yuta Takanashi. That was the one I meant to say at the beginning for Azorius Control. This version's on 3 cutdowns, Go for the Throats, No More Lies as Disruption, and then the full Denic, 3 Virtues, 1 Alkalizats kind of mixed into there. Concealed Courtyard's another card that got helping with the lands by just giving you more duels early that are not pain lands. Similarly, again, just a lot of varied interaction spells, cut downs, destroy evils, disdainful strokes. But of a lot of the black decks, you'll see Long Goodbye being slotted either main board or sideboard. This is a clean answer to like Rafine without having to worry about the ward cost mixed in. Even that, just like getting around counter spells like No More Lies. Pest Control is a card you'll see out of these black-white X decks. Just destroys all non-land permanents 1 mana or less. Very good against like the Convoke style strategies. Lauren in here, artifacts, enchantments, and then we've covered a lot of these kind of effects. Tashanas for activated abilities. In the more controlled matchups or like heavy sweepers, you have Wandering Emperor, Akhlazot's for like Golgari matchups. Blue-black, just decks that aren't really typically exiling, you can keep getting it back. So that's it for the week 4 standard best of 3. Let me know what you've been playing, what you've been enjoying, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.